Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Filled with Flesh Show. I'm Cynthia Damascus.
And I'm Molly Safford.
Thank you so much for joining us. And as you can see, we're in our new digs.
Isn't this exciting? I'm so happy. This is like awesome to be together in person. And it's just so much quieter here in the studios. And like you said, we were talking about earlier, just fixing some of these audio problems that happen with Zoom, as all of you are familiar with. There's a lot of technical difficulties when you're trying to do everything remotely. So this is a nice change.
Exactly. We wanted to apologize for last month's show because we know that there was a lot of echoing, and that was one of the issues that we couldn't really take control of because Molly and I were in two different places. But now we can have more control over that, and I think you're going to enjoy the results. Well, Molly, we're going to be talking about hobbies for a little bit here because that's what we've been doing in our deep dive with our membership, right?
Yeah, we thought it'd be neat to share with you all what we're working on in our membership, because each month we take on one deep dive. We talk specifically about a specific mindset or habit or rhythm that is imperative or important to help us pursue wellness, to maintain calm, and to become that stabilizing presence for others. And this month, that topic, that habit, is developing wholesome, healthy hobbies.
Exactly. So what we did with everyone, we sent out what we call a circle of life. And the circle of life consists of a bunch of different spokes. And what we found was that for a lot of people, the spoke that represented their hobbies, if that needed to be worked on, if that was an area that needed to be improved, often another spoke that represented joy also needed improvement. And we looked at the relation between the two, and we thought we saw a lot that we could address.
Yes. And as we discussed this together in our membership, we found that a very common struggle that we all really wrestled with was that nagging voice in our head that says, carving out time for an endeavor, a hobby, something that isn't necessarily profitable, something that isn't always service-oriented, something that's not moving us toward a certain goal, that this is wasted time. Exactly. And it's really hard to get over that, to give ourselves permission to make that act of creativity, that learning something new, to give these things real priorities in our lives.
And especially if it's something that you enjoy, but maybe you're not necessarily great at, but you just enjoy doing it. A lot of people will drop a hobby for that reason, which is really sad.
Yeah, and we talked about that, how you notice that in children. I know as a mom, watching my kids when they were small, so naturally be inclined to create, to try something new. They'd be putting on a play, singing a song, drawing or painting. And as they get older and become a little more self-conscious and more aware of people around them, to really begin to judge their work, to feel like, oh, I'm not good at this. This isn't important. I can't get a scholarship for this. I'm not that good. And all these things that used to be just for, the sake of joy, yes. They really kind of tamp that down and lose that. Exactly. In their lives. And you see that it's really detrimental, like you said, because hobbies are what help us to see beautiful things. I think without hobbies, without investing in something that brings us joy, that creating just for the sake of beauty, of just for creativity, we can really fixate on just things that are broken, what is stressful, what has to be done. And we need that levity provided by hobbies. It reminds me of the Elder Sophroni quote about, stand at the brink of the edge of despair. I think that's right. And when you can't take that any longer, draw back and have a cup of tea.
That's my favorite quote. One of my favorite quotes.
Me too. And I think about that. Like, that's what a hobby is to me. It's drawing back and having that cup of tea.
Exactly. And that reminds me of another quote that I heard recently. It was an interview with Megan Hyatt Miller, and she was talking about hobbies. And she said, you know how sometimes you are taking a shower and your best ideas come, like you wish you had a pad of paper and a pen in the shower, or you're out for a walk, or you're doing something that's just clearing up your mind, that's just white space in your life, and that's when the creativity comes. And that's when you want to hold on to something that you weren't previously able to grasp. That's exactly what she said. Hobbies are that white space in our lives, and it improves every other area of our life and brings us joy.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
That is very true.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are your hobbies?
So I've been working on a couple things. One, as you know, is, I've been on my health journey, and I've always been intimidated by cooking. I've always considered myself a bad cook.
Oh.
Isn't that sad? I've always been insecure about it. And so that was one thing I thought I'm going to really try, now that I'm really trying to eat really whole, beautiful, unprocessed foods, mostly plant-based, and I'm going to take some risks and try some things I haven't tried before, and which takes a little extra time. It takes time to chop vegetables.
Yes, it does.
To chop vegetables, to, create these meals that I've not made before. But it's been really lovely. I've tried some things. Some have been big hits. Some have been not as big of hits.
Always.
But I've little by little gaining a little bit of confidence in my skills, and that's been really nice. And the other thing I've been doing recently, I picked up my camera again, and as you know, I kind of laid that aside for a while. I got a little burnout on that.
Yes.
But now I've been using it just to capture things I'm grateful for, things that make me calm, things that make me happy. And I have my Molly Severin Photographs Instagram page, and I've been just starting to share them on there, and almost like this a gratitude journal, but in images.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
And it's been really,
Yes.
it's fun. It makes me feel good.
I bet it does. I bet it's up the level of joy in your life.
Yeah.
Rediscovering something. And I love that you brought up that you had a hobby. You loved it in photography. You turned it into a business. It became your job. And then some of the joy was lost, and you had to stop it for a while.
Yeah.
I've had the same thing happen with health and wellness. I've been a health and wellness buff since I was in my late teens. And then within the last 7 years or so, I turned it into my profession. And there are times when I just want to sit down and read about health and wellness, but it suddenly turns into work.
Yeah.
I start thinking of clients. I start thinking of all kinds of stuff. Recently, I had a friend tell me that they were having a tough time because singing in church and chanting used to be a hobby. They used to love to do it. It brought them joy. They would do it at home in their spare time. Then they became the choir director, and it became their job. And suddenly the joy wasn't quite there. So I would love it if anyone listening or watching this show would share with us your journey if you turned a hobby into a profession, and how you're balancing that and where you're finding the joy, because I don't think Molly and I are the only ones who have experienced that.
Yes. No. Yeah, that would be lovely. And if you email us, we'll share that.
Yes.
Next month, and just kind of an update on that, because I think that's a really good. I think it's a good point.
Yeah.
I think it's something to. Think about for those of us who want a vocation that involves our natural gifts, but how to maybe strike that balance of, when you have the added responsibility of it being a business, how you still can retain the joy of creativity, of learning. That would be awesome.
That would be. So most of my hobbies are around activity. I just like movement, I guess. So most of them are around playing tennis and going for hikes. But I also love to read, and I kind of forgot my love for reading for a long time. I used to spend my childhood in libraries. Like that was just my happy place. And then I kind of forgot the library existed.
Yeah.
After growing up and getting in the corporate world and working all the time. And I recently rediscovered the library a few years ago, and I'm just back to reading, and I love it. And it is not only a hobby that brings me joy, but it's also great stress relief.
Yes. Yeah, I think we forget that. I think you're right. Like same thing. I was in the library constantly, would ride my bike there, spend hours there. And it is like one of the most, I think, like happiest. There's just so many possibilities when you're in the library. Like there's so many things you could learn or study or new novels to read. And it's a very uplifting place if you're stressed to go to, I think.
Exactly.
I agree.
Think that the library is the perfect place to cultivate a peaceful mind. How about you?
Yes, I love that. You know what? The library and our local antique store. Those are the two things. We have an antique mall that those two places in town are when I'm feeling just like the heaviness or just feel overwhelmed, I can go to either of those places, the library just to sit and to be and to read. And then I just wander the antique mall with all kinds of, you know, I'm fascinated by these images from these items from the past and these antiques, and I just can lose myself there as well. And
I love to do that at the Container Store.
Oh,
I'll go up and down the aisles, walk out 2 hours later not having bought a thing, but feeling so much better than when I walked in.
I haven't tried that one. I'll have to give that
you should try that. So we are going to have a wonderful show for you today. We have the second half of our interview with Dr. Albert Rossi. And of course, last month we had him on. This month we're going to be talking about the imagination and living in the present moment. This is an awesome interview. I know you're going to love it. Then we're going into our Healthy Body segment. This segment is with Mary Moranville. She's actually a member of our membership. She's in our membership. She's so inspirational.
You're going to love her.
You're going to love her. We just wanted you all to meet her and hear about her journey. And then for the productive life, we're going to be handling another question from our audience. And I think it's something that everyone's going to be able to relate to right now. It's very timely.
Yes.
So with that, let's get into our first segment.
In case you missed part 1 last month, Dr. Albert Rossi is a licensed clinical psychologist and Christian educator who has spoken and written widely on these topics. Dr. Rossi was a member of the SCOBA Commission on Contemporary Social and Moral Issues for 6 years. He is currently Director of Field Education and serves as the resident clinical psychologist at St. Vladimir Seminary. He hosts the podcast Becoming a Healing Presence on Ancient Faith Radio and is the author of Becoming a Healing Presence and his most recent book, All Is Well. So welcome back to Dr. Rossi. So good to have you here again. Last month we focused on stillness and we had so many more questions for you. We decided actually to break our interview up into 2 different sections, and this time we're just focusing on the imagination and the present moment. So, with Filled with Less, our ministry, we deal a lot. We really focus on simplicity for body, mind, and soul. So simplicity in our food. So we're eating unprocessed, God-created whole foods. In our schedules, we are creating white space. So we make room for peace-inducing rhythms and routines. And then even in our thoughts, really simplifying our thoughts and swatting away negative, anxious, judgmental thoughts. And we also focus on the present moment. And so when I was reading your book, All Is Well, you had a passage in there that really struck me that I was interested in talking to you about. You wrote that this present moment is the best moment of my life. Why would I say that? Because the present moment is the only point of contact I have with God. All else, past and future, is a construct of my imagination. The present moment is the only reality I have. So when I read that, I underlined it, I started, and I thought about it a lot. I still think about it a lot. But I'm so glad you're here because I wanted to ask you, what do you mean when you say that the past and the future are constructs of our imagination?
Oh, Molly, it's a really good question. And I don't have a definitive answer for myself at all, except I know that it's true and I will say some things. But before I do, in conversation with the two of you, Molly, you read it, you started, you underlined it, you've been thinking about it. What might it mean to you? How might you expand that a little bit?
Well, when I think about the future, it's always something I'm imagining, right? I'm imagining a worst case scenario. I'm assuming something that could possibly happen. And when I'm caught up in that, I'm immediately, my inner calm is completely disturbed. Um, versus being right now, where you say, this is my point, my contact with God. If I don't think beyond that, if I just abide, um, then that becomes reality instead of imagination. This is what is versus this is what could be. Does that make sense? I mean, it's kind of how I think about it.
It makes perfect sense. Cynthia, would you comment on that?
Well, I would comment on what Molly said, or
Yeah, what she said and what the basic idea that the present moment is the only place we meet God and
yeah,
the rest is imagination, past and future.
yeah. Well, I mean, I can attest too personally that whenever I'm caught up with the past, feeling guilty or shameful, or I should have said this, or what if I did that? And I mean, it's not serving me, and it isn't connecting me to God. It's all in my head and all about me. And then if I'm looking in the future, again, it's again all about me and what I can control and what I'm afraid of or what I think should happen or whatever. But when I'm just being, I think that's the only time I can connect with God.
Yes, I'll say a few things, make a couple of distinctions. What we're talking about is awareness, consciousness. And awareness is a function of the front of our brain, our frontalis, and our heart. And we say that the part of my awareness that's in my brain is my rational thinking, which we need. I need and you need right now to be very rational and have a flow of conversation. And the other part of our consciousness is our heart, which is our intuition, which is connected to our brain by 50,000 neurons. And they are, for our purposes, different forms of awareness. Okay. That said, the present moment, right now, includes our entire past. Everything I've ever thought and done is synthesized and included in the present moment. And that can be demonstrated scientifically. There are a number of studies where in brain operations where they need to look for a cyst or a growth in the brain, at least in the old days, they had to actually saw off the top of the cranium, shave the head, saw it off, take the top of the head and put on the side, and then work on the brain while the person is under local anesthesia because they need feedback. Well, I don't know if I'd like having local anesthesia and hearing the buzz of the top of my head being taken off. There's no pain, but an awareness of it. You can feel the breeze going by the top of my brain. And the Penfield in Canada, though there are some questions about his science, took a stylus and knew exactly what he wanted to touch in the open brain, did, and got the person to what's called abreaction, experience an event in the past that was forgotten. And the person didn't remember it only, the person relived it. So in this case, it was a woman, and he said, okay, I touched your brain. What are you experiencing? I am 7 years old playing at a piano recital, and I can feel my fingers move, and her fingers were moving, and I can hear the music, and it's not a memory, it's an actual experience of playing the piano at 7 years old. All I want to say is it's all there. Everything we've ever done is known by our brain and, of course, by our guardian angel. That said, the present moment includes all of that growth and retardation that makes me me. That's the only place I can meet God. And it's the only place I can meet the real me. It's the only place I can be me, human me. All else, so the present moment, if I'm pure, I can be aware of my breath, my inhale, my exhale, and my fingers touching the desktop where I am. And that's pretty much my full consciousness at this moment. Now it comes back to this conversation with you. But I can pause and be in the present moment with my sensations totally. But that's rare. No, it doesn't happen too often because we are doing other things. So one can be in the present moment fully or in one's imagination, but I can only be in my imagination in the present moment. When we finish this interview, I will get in my car and drive back to St. Vladimir Seminary. Well, I'll need to think about whether I'm going to go Route 84 or Route 95. That is, in the present moment, I'll have to plan the future not yet arrived. And that's all present moment activity. In the present moment, I can plan the future or ponder the future. So in the imagination, we'll say there are two parts to our imagination, a light part and a dark part. If in my imagination, I'm planning what route to take, aware that it's the present moment and God's present and he's helping me plan it, that's all part of the flow of the present moment. That's not aside from the present moment. That's being done in the present moment. By the way, when we live in the present moment, it's not an infinite or near infinite series of still photographs. It's not that static. It's a flow. So I am aware of my fingertips on the desk, then aware now that I will have to plan my trip back. And then I come back to conversation and look into your eyes. That's all one big flow with Christ in the present moment. The imagination, so that's light in the future. And it can be light in our imagination in the past. I can think about, something that occurred that is energizing for me to think about now, all in the present moment. And I can also think about something in the past that's really dark and can get me down. Well, that's just dark. So the imagination includes both. We could talk a ton about this, but I'm always struck by the Magnificat of the Theotokos when she says, he has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud and the imagination of their hearts. Oh, do I ponder that?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, scattering us in our dark imagination. Now, the short version for us now and our viewers is that when I really choose to go into my imagination's darkness in the past or in the future, I can actually begin to build a big astronaut helmet around my head and become totally living in that space. Although talking, the helmet stops me getting through my helmet to you and you getting through to me. And that's called a narcissistic moment or a narcissistic lifestyle. And I know people like that. I know one Orthodox priest who, by his wife's standards, is a narcissist. He just lives in his own mental space. He makes it up. And we are capable of making up an alternate reality and living within it. And then the real you can't get through to the real me because I have blocked it all off. And that's always a danger. So in the present moment, if I happen to be sitting outside with my family and extended family at a really lovely picnic on a summer day and it starts to rain, obviously I can be disappointed and say I'm disappointed that it's raining. And then sort of surrender it and pack up the picnic gatherings and go on with life. Or I can obsess about what an awful time this is. And I had planned this picnic and I have everything, the watermelon's all cut out, and now it's beginning to rain. If I begin to make up an alternate reality of negativity in my mind, which I can do, that's the beginning of this construct of this plastic astronaut helmet on my head. And we can do that with any event. We can do it with an upset stomach or the food we're eating or anything. We can always veer off reality. And again, there's so much to say about this, but in one of the epistles of St. John, he says we sin every day. And anyone who says that he or she doesn't is a liar. And I ponder that. At the end of the day, I say to myself, in truth, I've kept the commandments. In truth, I really haven't done anything really that I consider sinful. I'm trying to treat people kindly and pay my taxes, and here I am. It's not at the behavior level. It's at the thought level. It's at the level of me creating this alternate reality, me not accepting reality on reality's terms. As we're talking about the present moment, this is what is. Now I either accept it or I don't. One time I saw a truck, a small pickup truck, parked, and it had a bumper sticker on the back that said, "Reality sucks." I looked at it and I was stunned. I shrugged my shoulders. I didn't judge the driver. I said, whatever he's thinking, and I kept going. That was months ago, and I'm still thinking about it. What does it mean, reality sucks? Now, that might have been sort of a sarcastic thing that he put. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But I know that if I were to make a bumper sticker for the back of my little car, which I'm not going to do, I would have a bumper sticker that says, unreality sucks, because it leads to this place that I'm only living in my head, where there's no access for me or anybody else, which I can do. And I can do that a little bit or a lot. I can complain interiorly about reality, the present moment. This is, a lot of traffic on Route 95. I should have taken 84. Or I can simply tell God I'm frustrated. We have to have feelings, but at the same time, accept reality on reality's terms. So in our imagination, it can be either light or dark, and we can either be attentive to the details of the present moment. So, Molly, comment on that if you would.
Wow.
I'm glad he called on you.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a million things, and one is accepting reality on reality's terms. It really requires complete surrender to God's will. So much of my frustration, angst, anguish comes from expectations. Or grieving the death of my own expectations. But when you truly believe in a God that is good and merciful and guiding every aspect of your life, and you surrender to that, and you feel everything is part of that will, then you have that calm that we talked about at the last, that deep inner calm we talked about at our last conversation. And that's so powerful, the idea of the imagination that can help, like you said, that picnic, like all of a sudden you're just thinking about why everything isn't working, why this is bad, why this, instead of thinking, accept it. This is what I need. This is what is. And just it's such a simple way of living. I mean, you're just like, well, God knows what I need.
Mm-hmm. And he's with me. I'm not alone. And he's inside me, and we're together.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Father Hopko used to often say there's a book, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? And his take on it was, given what happened to Christ, why don't more bad things happen to good people? Because that's the expectation. We expect what life holds, period. Mm-hmm. And often it's not going to be nice. I'll tell a little anecdote here from Roman Catholicism. Saint Teresa of Avila, 16th century Spanish woman, strong woman, fought with popes and founded the Carmelites and had a big convent with many, many, many women, decided to set up a house close by. They called it a daughter house, a second convent, chose a few women from her group, got in a horse-drawn carriage, and set off to set up a second hopefully successful convent. Hot day in Spain's summer. Went along, then went down a little hill, and then at the bottom of this little hill was a stream. They started to go through the stream, and a wheel fell off the horse-drawn carriage. The nuns got out, rolled up their habit, rolled up their sleeves, and began to fix the wheel that fell off, and were being bitten mercilessly by these big Spanish mosquitoes. In the water, perspiring, mosquito bitten. And according to the story, Mother St. Teresa, she raised her fist to the clouds and she said to God, if this is the way you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few. If this is the way you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few. We need to ponder that. We need to ponder the way God Almighty treated his son, allowed him to be hung on a cross, and the way he's treated some of the great saints. So we don't get surprised when bad things happen to us. That's part of the death resurrection Orthodox message. Mm-hmm. And it can only be found in the present moment. And in the present moment, we're going to have all kinds of thoughts that are there. Some planted by Christ who lives within us, and some from Satan who is real, though outside of us, has access to our thought processes. And that needs, but, clearly Orthodoxy teaches that we can look at our thoughts, know whether they're light or dark, and those dark thoughts, of course, St. Paul says, take every thought captive. We need to change them, surrender them, not indulge them. Oh, you're so inadequate, Al, you can't do a thing right. Blah, blah, blah. No, it's a dark thought. I just surrender it. I don't do any big thing with it. I just let it go to the best I can. So the important part here is we are not our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. There's a great book on this topic, Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives, by Elder Thaddeus. We're not our thoughts. We're more than our thoughts. There's an I live now, not I, but Christ lives in me, deeper than the current thought on my forehead. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and one of our sentences is, don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think. Take a look at it. If it's energizing from God, entertain it. If, however, it's darkening, surrender it. Lord, have mercy. And then life goes on.
It's not about what's happening to you. It's how you react to what's happening to you.
It's not about
Same
what's
thing could happen. Yeah, the same thing could happen to 20 different people, and a lot of those people are still happy, and the other people are, grudging and not happy. It all depends on how you look at things. And golly, Dr. Rossi, there's so much that you said earlier that made me think about living in the present moment, but at the same time being able to plan for the future, like your thoughts about going home after this interview. I know that a lot of people feel like God will just take care of everything, and I'm going to just react to whatever he brings me. And why even plan or dream or think about what I want to be when I grow up, right? Because this is decided, and I'm along for the ride. So can you just touch on, before we go, I'd just like you to touch on how to live in the present moment and still plan for the future at the same time, and expound on that.
It really is a great question, and it's a lifetime learning. We need to be totally human and totally energized and active in our lives. For example, for this interview, I could have said, well, we'll do the interview, and whatever God puts in my mind, it comes out my mouth, and we'll see what God does. Or I spent at least an hour and a half making notes and preparing and looking at my past notes in preparation. that's a delicate thing. But in making those notes, I believe in those present moments, I was planning and doing God's will about the future. And it also deals with our thoughts about the past. Some of the thoughts of the past can be very helpful in the present moment, and some can deepen, darken us. Give you a quick example. When I was in college, I was really lost, empty soul, really. And as a result, I made this big plastic life I lived within. I was president of student council and had a little red convertible and commissioned second lieutenant ROTC and engaged to this beautiful co-ed for 3 years. Um, and going along, la la la. One day, our senior year, parked in a car on her campus, Sunday afternoon, she said to me, Al, can I say something to you? Well, sure, honey. What do you want to say? She said, you talk a lot, but you don't say much. And I remember just going totally stone silent. I didn't say anything. I couldn't say it, but I knew it was the truth. She wasn't being angry. She wasn't being vindictive. She was just saying, it looks like it's going to rain. This is what I'm seeing. And now I know it, that when I heard that, I was stunned because I didn't have it that clear in my consciousness, that somehow I made an unconscious resolution to reverse that equation. Talk less and say more. Now, how I've done on that. But when I think about that past moment, now it's very energizing. It helps me get more quiet. So when we think about the past in the present moment, it can be a really good thing. Or I think about my interview yesterday with the students at Crossroad in Hellenic College and wonderful exchanges with those youth. Well, that's very energizing in the present moment. But I can think of some of the really awful things I've done and get down. So yeah, but it's always about the present moment, using our thoughts and imaginations, allowing Christ to be in us.
Yeah, and having faith that if we start walking down the wrong path, God will stop us.
That's right. Having
or
faith.
there will be a why.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
Yeah, I actually have 2 kids in college now. So this is a big conversation because that's the time of your life where you are planning ahead. You are planning a career. It's very future oriented. And so we try to strike that balance of saying, work hard, develop the gifts God has given you. But when a door closes, be flexible, turn direct, shift, pivot, without banging on a closed door and being paralyzed by, again, the death of your expectation, because it's a little bit of both. Like you said, it's paradox. So you're working hard, you're moving forward, but you're not completely leveled by a closed door or a disappointment.
Mm-hmm. So it's so important. We need not the strain. Oh, I have to figure out what I'm going to do when I graduate from college, and I don't know. And no, we do have to plan, look at options, and know that God is going to guide us. All the while, not overstraining and overdoing it. Tell a quick little anecdote. One time at St. Vladimir's, we had an institute in the summer, and I was to give a talk, and I, how do I say, printed out a sheet that I was going to give to all the participants. There were a lot of people there, maybe 50 people in a folder. So we had matins, then was going to be my talk. Father Hopko said the matins, and I wanted his blessing on this quote. So after matins, I had time. I stood and he was talking to a woman, so I waited. When he finished, I said, Father Tom, I have this quote that I'm going to give to everyone. I'd like you to read it and see if you approve. He said, no, I have a quote I want to tell you, Al, and just listen. I said, Father Tom, just read my quote. I have to give a talk in a couple of minutes. No, Al, just listen to what I'm going to say. Okay. He said the exact quote I was holding. Shivers went up my spine. I don't want to make more than it was. We Orthodox don't believe in coincidences. And I gave him the quote that I was holding. Of all the books in his library and all the quotes in St. Theophan the Recluse, this is the one he said. Now, I don't have that quote here, but I'll paraphrase it for us now and for the listeners. The quote goes on to say, expend effort in your living the Christian life. Nothing happens without effort. But when you come to the end of your effort, and even during your effort, surrender it all to God and know that it is Him who's acting. And if you think that you can do anything on your own, God says, in effect, go ahead, do all you want, but you will achieve nothing. That's the quote. And that's exactly what we're saying. We need to work, we need to expend effort, and then realize it's Him through us and not us. But we can't just sit back and do nothing and say, oh, no, no.
Yeah.
I know
Like the
priests.
paralytic,
That's
right? The
right.
paralytic had to move,
That's,
get in the water.
that's right. It's exactly like the paralytic. Yep.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rossi. I hope that you are working on a book that expounds on what we're talking about today.
I'm not.
No?
I wrote you.
No, that's
Becoming
surely there's a third in you.
no, there's really not.
No, okay.
Because all of these ideas are truly interwoven in those two books. There's nothing I have said now that's not written already. Now, it's not, in a little single chapter, but it's woven throughout. And they're really short books. A lot of college students use them as book study books and so on. So my own feeling is everything that's inside me is already out in those two books, and I'm happy. So give me a hammock and a pina colada. No. I stay busy.
Well, someone else is going to have to write a book, I think, on living, being productive in the present moment, but still letting God lead you. I think that that's just a fabulous topic. But
Oh, I do too.
we
And
appreciate.
you know what? I think that you two could co-author such a book.
Uh-oh, Molly, he's putting it back in our court. We're already working on a book, Dr. Rossi, and it's not coming along very quickly. So,
Okay. It's all God. Do
yeah,
your
it's all
part,
good.
and
It's
then,
all, God's time.
yes.
Well, thank you so much for being with us both last month and this month and doing this two-parter. It was a real pleasure, as always, to talk to you. And I know I've mentioned this on my Holistic Christian Life podcast before, but Molly, I think it was your mom years ago, told me that every time she's been with Dr. Rossi, she feels like she's gotten a big warm hug. And I always feel like that when I talk to you, Dr. Rossi. So thank you once again.
Oh, thank you, both of you. Thank you for doing all that you're doing with this wonderful podcast and all of your good work. And as we close, I will close my eyes and say a prayer for each of you. And each of you, please close your eyes and say a prayer for me. Thank the both of you very, very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I wrote down so many notes while we were holding that interview. And one of the things that I've continued to actually teach to my clients and to my community is when he said that the present moment is my only contact with God and that the rest is imagination. So when we're thinking back on things that happened in the past, that's imagination. If we're thinking ahead, that's imagination. And that imagination can go to the dark or the light. Right. So powerful.
Oh, it is. And, as we were doing the interview, and I re-listened to it again this morning, I was struck by that exact same part because for sure, the quickest way for me to be brought to my knees is for that thought that's implanted about, but what if this happened?
Yes.
And then I follow it. And then it completely overtakes me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it is happening, like that is the reality. And how much of my life, how many years or sleepless nights I have given or wasted on imagining things that could happen, that never do. Mm-hmm. And then things I never imagined that could happen, maybe have happened. But I've been given the grace, the mercy to live those out for my salvation.
Yes.
And so I keep going, and we were talking about this before, I'm not sure. We talk to so many amazing people.
We do.
And read so many amazing books. And I remember writing down one that said, if a thought comes to you and it is energizing, pursue it. Give it room, give it space to breathe and to grow. If a thought causes you anguish, or fear, cut it out. That thought is not from Christ. If it's from Christ, it will be peaceful. And, you know, I definitely, in my own, if you're paying attention to your inner world here, you can feel the minute you start thinking ahead, those waves and the turbulence, versus if you pull it back and think, no, I'm here right now. This is the present moment. Right here now, I'm here with you. God is here in this present moment, and all is well right now. And immediately feel calm.
Absolutely. It's so easy to not live in the present moment when you feel like you've made a mistake in the past, too.
And you play it over and
yes,
over
and
again.
you wallow in it. And I loved how he talked about his drive home after the interview, and he was going to have to make a decision. Which highway was he going to take? And if he made the wrong choice and took a highway and got stuck in traffic, he could make a couple choices. He could beat himself up. Why didn't I choose the other highway? Or he can say what he said in the interview, it is what it is. And I think of that in my own life, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. So you're at the grocery store. You're trying to choose which checkout line to go in.
I never choose right.
Yeah. I hardly ever choose right. But you get stuck in the line that all of a sudden just stops and the other one is going. And I have been guilty of standing there just kicking myself and kicking myself and kicking myself. I can't believe I chose this line. Well, it's too late.
Right.
There's really nothing I can do about it. I mean, I could go jump the line, but then who knows what would happen. I've done that before. Hopefully you've all been there too, where you're like...
Right, try to pick the right way.
Yeah. But it is what it is. And gosh, in retrospect, what a perfect time to just stand there and pray and be patient and pray for patience.
Wasn't there, again, another quote by a saint that I don't remember, but it was essentially saying, you know, for those who see God's hand, for those who leave everything to God, they see God's hand in everything.
Oh, yes.
You know, and that's also very true, because I really noticed that when I wake up and do that morning silence, and I believe that and think, yes, everything, God, everything that happens is from you. And then you begin to find meaning in the longer line.
Yes.
You begin to find meaning in the traffic and all the things that normally are just annoyances or frustrations. And suddenly you're like, oh no, these are opportunities for something. Opportunities either, like you said, for stillness, for patience, to engage with maybe a person you wouldn't have if you were not in this line. And to really find like holiness or possibility in every mundane thing. It's a totally different way to live your life.
Yeah. And I think you're hitting on a really good point right here. So you may have made the decision to get in the wrong checkout line or take the wrong highway. The mistake is to continue to think of that decision as though you're the only one in control. Like, yes, that was a decision you made, but God is in control of every situation. You may have created the situation with your decision, but that doesn't take him out of the equation, right? Leave God in the equation and meditate on what Molly just said, because I think that was beautifully said, because he's in everything, even when we make the wrong decision. So with this, that gives us hope. And in our next segment, it's also, for me, all about hope. You're going to be meeting a member of our Filled with Less membership. It's called the Living Every Day with Sacred Simplicity membership. If you're not in it, I think you'll want to be. We'll talk about what we're focusing on this month at the end of the show. But Mary is a great inspiration of hope, and I'd like to introduce her to you. 28 years in the U.S. Navy and retired as a commander, and then worked as a defense contractor until 2012. Since then, she has served leadership roles in the community and loves to tap and square dance. She's married and has 2 children and 3 grandchildren. She also has 3 masters. Since early adolescence, she's been on a health journey driven by a stubborn weight problem that seemed unsolvable with her busy and stressful lifestyle and her family history of obesity and diabetes. Recently, however, she was able to attain her ideal weight. She lost over 60 pounds and has easily maintained this weight for over a year, leading a healthy lifestyle. This journey's led her to become even more knowledgeable about wellness, and she's currently a student at the Functional Nutrition Alliance, which is where I went to school. It was one of the schools I attended, and she's studying to become a certified functional nutrition counselor to help others with their health challenges. So let's welcome Mary onto the show. Hello, Mary. Thank you so much for joining us on the Filled with Less show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
You are such an inspiration to Molly and I, and I'm sure to everyone else in our membership. And we just wanted a larger audience to get to know you, because I think that your story gives people hope. You've been through a lot with your weight, and I know you have a lot of good stuff to share. So first of all, I know you've struggled with weight for a good portion of your life. Can you tell everybody what you tried, just didn't work, and you wouldn't recommend it?
Well, I want to start out with what I tried very young. When I was 11 years old, I tried the Carnation Slender diet because I was feeling chubby, and I was very good at it. You know, I was very strict. I didn't drink water. I thought I would gain weight. But anyway, I did lose weight. I think I whacked all my hormones very badly because after I lost all this weight, not a lot of weight, but maybe 15, 20 pounds, and then I kept it off for a little bit, but then all of a sudden I felt dysfunctionally needing sugar and I just ballooned. I think my hormones got whacked. I don't recommend that for young people, for sure. Young people should not do any dieting as far as I'm concerned. You have to be very careful about their hormones, and they do like to diet. But anyway, that was the beginning of my diet history. And then I tried a lot of things over time. Dr. Atkins was popular when I was younger, and liquid protein. I joined organizational weight loss programs. I tried keto, paleo, low fat, low carb, gluten-free, and the worst thing was extreme exercise. You can't lose weight with just exercise. Exercise is wonderful, but it's kind of like not a wonderful weight loss only thing. I thought a lot of those programs will probably work, you know, for some people, and I'm sure those programs have a lot of good aspects of them. But unless the program makes you healthy and gets your hormones healed, these programs sometimes didn't work. And for me, they didn't for sure work. And I would lose some weight always, but I was always gaining it back. There was not a permanent solution. And it was very frustrating because I went up and down a lot. I yo-yoed from 210 pounds, 60-pound losses, and then I did another several 20-pound losses, like more than I can count. And it just didn't produce permanent weight loss. It was like, okay, and as soon as I got under stress or my hormones, weren't under control or whatever, I would gain it all back. So I would say that if you're hungry all the time and you have no energy and you gain the weight back, this is not a good program. You need to look for something else, maybe something that makes you healthier first. And, I always thought dieting was like holding your breath underwater. You had to come up for air because dieting just didn't have a good connotation in my mind. But anyway, I was disappointed all the diets let me down, and I did not like being overweight. So obviously I wanted to find a solution, and it took all these years, how old I am, to really think I may have found something, hopefully, that works.
You know, it's funny that you said that about being on those Carnation drinks and then getting off of them and then eating sugar. And it's funny because those drinks have sugar in them. So it's not like you're getting rid of that craving, as you can attest to, correct?
Yes, it's exactly right. It probably titillated my sugar, but then it starved me. And so I was whacked with a huge desire for sugar. And then I think by losing weight that way, you actually, your hunger hormones, ghrelin, insulin, and leptin all get messed up from too low calories or, trying to starve yourself. It's very damaging, especially young girl.
Exactly.
But
And I love that you brought that up, Mary, because not even for just young people, but for older people who want to take some weight off, but they're starving themselves. Well, their body
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
have the nutrients, right, to create the hormones to feed themselves.
exactly.
The organs start shutting down, and the body's like, well, we're not going to let go of this fat because we need to survive.
Right, and you will gain more than you were when you started because
Exactly.
your body will just think it's World War III starvation going on, and it's going to hold on to everything you eat, and you'll gain more back. So it's really dangerous. Usually it yo-yos people back higher than they were.
It does. It does. So something finally worked. You were able to get all the weight off. You have a lot of energy. I can attest. You exude energy. Tell everyone what finally worked.
Well, let me tell you what finally worked. Of course, all those years, I sort of knew that nutrition was important. I knew the difference between broccoli and a ding dong, but all that knowledge didn't seem to help, and that was the frustrating part. And I would study nutrition, but I had this inkling that my insulin was not working. My brothers and sisters are type 1 and type 2 diabetics, and I had this feeling I had some insulin issues, but I didn't know how to solve them particularly. I had a test when I was in college, and the test showed that I was a flat blood sugar curve, which I found out later means like a hyperinsulin. I was insulin resistant. I was not sensitive to insulin. So, and I sort of knew that, so I would go on low carb diets. I would try to address insulin the best I could. Nothing really worked. And then lately, when I found out that, just recently, it probably dawned on me why this fasting is working so well. I'll tell you about in a minute. But that when you have too much insulin, because you're insulin resistant in your body, it blocks the brain's ability to be leptin sensitive or to use leptin to control your appetite. And so you have kind of a runaway appetite. I used to get hungry an hour or two after meals. I would sometimes under stress get extremely hungry. There was no leptin to put a brake on. And it was part of this insulin problem I had. And until I really fixed that, and then the leptin got under control, that I could naturally lose weight. Because when you're on diets and you're hungry, you go off them. And so the hunger thing, the constant, craving and the hunger was a problem. Also, I did realize that sugar is a really dangerous thing, and it can downregulate the dopamine in you. And you do have to be aware of that and try to realize it's going to take a little time to stop all those cravings. But you can do it because there's a thing called epigenetics, which says that, if you set your mind to do something to change the way you are, even nature or nurture, you can do it. So and part of the fasting solution, I'll tell you in a minute, I think solved both those things. So anyway, I ended up reading about fasting about 2 or 3 years ago. But it wouldn't work for me as insulin resistant because as soon as you start fasting, you get hungry and you're like, I'll never work. But I didn't give up. I decided to just continue to try. And so what happened was my goal was to get to 16 hours. I started out at 12 and inched my way up. But sometimes I had to cheat using fat, not protein or carbs. They stimulate insulin. So I would cheat and get through. And finally, after over a year, I finally was able to go a whole 16 hours. And then I started seeing magic. My body seemed to not be hungry anymore. I seemed to start burning my body fat. So the 16-hour worked for me. Now, I heard that even things like 13 hours and not eating between meals, you can slowly tweak your body to not rely on sugar and your glycogen in your liver, and you can switch over your body to be using actually your body fat. So I read about all this. Again, the implementation is harder and a lot of people give up on it, but I stuck with it, and it was kind of magic to me because I had tried so many other things. I have no willpower, or I can't knuckle myself through a diet. If I'm hungry or, that's it. The diet's out the window. So that's what finally worked for me was and I don't do it every day. As a matter of fact, now that I weigh 115, I don't have to do it every day, probably 4 or 5 days a week. And sometimes I cheat with my chocolate peanut butter serving. And it's not hard. It's so easy next to dieting, which is so hard. So that's my...
Oh, I love it. So it sounds like you were eating whole foods You were doing the timed eating. 16 hours worked for you and for your body. You were able to regulate your metabolism. You were able to balance those hormones that were out of whack, and the weight came off.
Right, the leptin and the insulin and the ghrelin got all under control. And yes, when my 8-hour window comes, I don't eat like a strict low carb diet or anything, and a lot of people do that, and that maybe some people need to do that. It ended up I didn't need to do that very much, and it was better for me with thyroid problems. I end up eating one small snack for breakfast, then a very large lunch and a smaller dinner, and I try to fast between meals. But I do eat healthy, but I do eat carbs, and I do try to eat healthy, but I also can have treats now and then. It doesn't seem to affect things. So that's good, because life has to have a few treats.
That is good. And you know what? I think that there's this idea out there that carbohydrates are bad. But our body needs carbohydrates. We just need complex carbohydrates, not those refined carbohydrates or the carbohydrates from sugar. But our body needs carbs to function. And I love that you're still getting those, and that's why you're so healthy and happy today.
Right. And the other thing is I noticed inflammation went down, and autophagy, I believe, kicked in, and I feel healthier because of that. And I do think you need to take a break from eating, because I think that's how your body digests and works out toxins and works through, root or cleaning of everything.
Absolutely. That's why snacking is so detrimental. And,
Absolutely.
A lot of people believe that, 5 small meals a day, which is what some people teach, that's a good thing, but it may not necessarily be for you. So
right.
This really lit a fire, and I think you had an interest in health and wellness before this whole journey, but you're really into it now, and you're going to a school that I went to, the Functional Nutrition Alliance. You're wanting to become a counselor, a nutrition counselor. Everything that you're learning right now, I know that you just finished up, I believe you said, the cardio module.
Yes, I just finished the cardio module, which included a sugar intensive about sweet tooth, bitter tooth, or something like that, which, again, filled in the blanks of a lot of things that I've studied over time trying to lose weight. I used to study nutrition, and it's a little bit wild, wild west out there, so it's really good to get grounded in the functional concept of operations. That's a military thing. The functional concept of the body's integrated whole, that helps put the pieces together of a lot of information out there. And we don't have all the answers yet, but I think that it's good to continue to be educated in that the way that the Functional Nutrition Alliance does. And I learn a lot every day, and it really thrills me to keep learning, because I think the world needs people that graduate from this course to help them not be helpless when they're given a diagnosis, and they know that through epigenetics and some working with their diet and lifestyle, that there's hope that they can do better with their disease or condition.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you've learned recently that you'd like to leave the audience with? Some aha moment that maybe you had that you think would really benefit our listeners?
Well, the one thought is, I think that because I know that there's functional counselors out there, if there's a weight problem or other conditions, I would seek out the functional guidance, because it's complicated and individual. I've given you my story, and I'm not saying everybody has the same issues I had over time with, uncontrolled appetite or inability to stay on diets. But that is a common problem. But again, people are individual. And I think these counselors, and we're being equipped to really understand people, all aspects of their life, stress and everything. So I know these functional counselors are available, and I would recommend someone seek out something like that to help them as a partner to solve their issues, and they should have a lot of hope that there's lots they can do more than they ever thought.
Thank you so much. That's what I wanted to do, is leave everyone who's watching the show or listening to it with hope and perseverance, and know the perseverance pays off, that there are answers out there. Thank you, Mary, for joining us. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next membership meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was inspiring. I'd heard Mary talk a little bit about her health journey before, but not in so much detail. So that was really neat for me to be able to listen in. Now, the term intermittent fasting is one I've heard a lot lately. What is your thoughts on that? What does that entail?
Well, intermittent fasting can be very useful. But with so many things in the health world, first of all, we're all bio-individual, which means we're not all the same. So if a 16-hour fast works for Mary, it may not work for you. So you have to be careful because, like we also touched on in the interview, fasting can also wreak havoc with your hormones. And this is what they found when intermittent fasting first came out and first became a big thing, is that especially with women who are of a certain age, they would start fasting every single day, let's say 16 hours as an example, and their hormones would go completely out of whack. So you have to be careful. So I wouldn't just jump on what Mary said and think that that's going to be the answer for yourself. You can experiment a little bit, but what I recommend is more of a time to eating approach. And a time to eating approach may be 1 week, for 6 days out of that week, you do a 12-hour fast. And maybe the next week you try a 14-hour, or you mix up a second or third week with a 16-hour and a 14-hour. The thing that it does is it helps shake up our metabolism without harming our hormones if we still have those days off when we're eating regularly. There are some great books out there that I would recommend if you prefer to read a book instead of work with a coach or somebody who can tell you what to do and monitor you, which is what I do with my clients. But Dr. Will Cole has a great book out. It's a new book called Intuitive Fasting. Dr. Annika Becca has a book out called Keto Green, but she has a new one out that also recognizes women's hormones. Bulletproof. His name is escaping me right now. It'll come to me. I use it. I see his name every day, but for some reason, he was a big intermittent fasting person years ago, and just recently he's really been embracing the fact that what he's been teaching isn't necessarily the healthiest thing for women. So be careful, but use good resources with good doctors who understand hormone balance.
Yeah, good. Helpful information. Good.
Yeah.
And, one other thing that really strikes me about Mary is her determination in that second half of her life to not just settle for her health issues. I think so many times when we get to, like you said, a certain age, we're not in our 20s, we're not in our 30s anymore, and we kind of give ourselves permission to just say, well, that's just age.
Right.
I'm sluggish, I'm tired, my knees hurt, all these things because it's natural. This is how life is,
I wish I'd made better choices when I was younger so that I don't feel so crummy today.
Right.
But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Take medication and move on.
Right. Exactly. And, it is tempting. It's tempting because you're like, when you're younger, I think a lot of it has to do with weight. You want to look a certain way.
Yes.
That's usually the big thing. What dress size can I fit into? And, now it's really become an issue for me anyway of feeling good. Yeah. Nutrition. I remember Matushka Sherry Kalbaum talking about when you tap into that vibrant health, you never want to go back. Yeah. And that is something that is possible at any age.
It is.
Any age you can start that. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, you can always become a better steward of your body and, find growth in these areas or these things that you think are just inevitable. As you knew, I've had a huge issue with my hormones and have been amazed by the power of nutrition to calm those symptoms down, give me renewed energy. And what I'm finding is that by taking care of your health, making that a priority in these, second half of life, it affects your mindset. Naturally, it makes me more positive. more hopeful. It affects my relationships. For some reason, isn't that strange? Like when I feel, when my body feels healthy, I'm more patient. I'm a better listener. And then there's also the ability to connect with my purpose, because when I don't feel good, or I'm not watching what I eat, I'm not exercising, I feel sluggish by 4 o'clock, I'm done. And all of a sudden, you have all this renewed energy and you're like, I don't have to just be done right after work and think I can't do anything else. You know, you can take a bike ride after work. You can invest in something creative. You can take on a project. It's amazing the ramifications of taking your health seriously.
Yes, and something too that I think is an added benefit is, you know, one of the problems with putting a Band-Aid on things, like just taking a medication because I have achy joints, which could be helped with proper nutrition and inflammation going down, you're not taking into account that down the road, it's not just a life or death thing. Like, we could all die tomorrow. We'll go when God takes us, right? And we'll go happily and thankfully because we want to be with Him. So life and death for the Christian is not the scary thing. What scares me is living out my days unhappy and diseased and in a nursing home and extremely high medical bills. And that can be avoided.
Right. And unable to live out our purpose.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So it's never too late for that.
Yes.
So we just wanted to leave you with that hope, and let us know if you have any questions on this. We're happy to field questions and help you as much as we can. So with that, we are going to move into our Productive Life segment. We have a wonderful question today that was posed to us by our audience, and we're going to cover that shortly.
So welcome to our Productive Life segment. And today's question from our community is, how do I safeguard myself against excessive busyness at the expense of my goals? That is an excellent question, very timely, as things begin to, I know around here in Indiana, really start to open up again. And there are more opportunities for social engagements, for commitments, for, serving opportunities. And, yet we also have these goals that we've worked, these rhythms and routines we've worked on establishing during the lockdown. And now we're going to be kind of confronted with how do we move forward and make all of that mesh, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because this may sound silly, but we were given a great gift for the last year and a half. We were given the gift of being able to step back and take a look at our lives. And I know Molly and I, we were teaching our community from a year and a half ago to say, okay, let's look at all the things that are no longer in your life and start thinking now of what you're going to let back in, whenever that could be. And back then we were like, maybe next month, we didn't know, right?
Right.
So we were given this great gift, so let's not squander it. Let's make sure, and this is the key, that we know our priorities, and we've talked about this on the show before, that we know our priorities and that we have them aligned in our mind or even on paper in the order of which they take precedence in our life. And then as things are coming in, do a check and balance. Does this align with that priority? And then also do a gut check and think back to a year and a half ago. If it was something that was in your life then and it was suddenly out of your life and you actually felt a sense of relief, there's a good indication of what should be coming back in or not. And doing a cross check, it probably did not align with your priorities. So that's the first thing that I would say is don't squander the gift we've just been given.
Right.
And make sure you know those top priorities in your life and be very intentional about what you're allowing back in.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think it's that intentionality that is different. I know for myself that pre-COVID, even really before we started working together, one of my main problems was just impulsive yeses. Really not thinking about what I was going to have to say no to by saying yes to this thing until I was overextended and, I really wasn't able even to carry out some of these commitments that I had made. And I felt the stress of that. And so now I'm much more cautious and, to weigh everything and to really think like, here's this opportunity. Let me sit with it. Let me look at what's already happening in my life, and, see if this can fit now.
Yeah.
And, I've already kind of had a taste of that because, so during COVID, I had developed this morning routine that was about 45 minutes long. Okay. So, reading, meditating for about 10 minutes, journaling and prayer. And that really, really kept me, oh my goodness, it was a lifesaver. I mean, that's what kept any kind of calm or rootedness throughout my day. That morning routine is everything. So, but it takes up a good chunk of my morning.
It does.
And so I was already thinking like, okay, there's some other things I want to add in. Here's an area I can shave off, And so I had it down to like, okay, I'm just going to get up and say like my morning prayer and then go. And then I fit in all these other things. So I did that for, I don't know, about a week. And man, I felt it.
I bet.
I felt so unanchored. I was anxious. I was impatient, reactive. And I was like, no, this is not, this is not where I'm going to give up. This is a non-negotiable. And what we talked about too before was, there's all this indecision about what to say yes to, what to say no to, because there's so many worthy things. But if we don't have that morning routine or that time of stillness and silence and prayer and journaling and preparing, we're not plugged into our source of discernment.
Right, yes.
That's where we open up and say, guide me. Okay, I'm completely open. I'm flexible. I am like the handmaiden of God, like do unto me according, let me be according to your will. And when we don't have that time to do that, these decisions get really tricky, and we can't hear the whisper of no, because sometimes the answer is yes, drop what you're doing and help this person or do this thing, and sometimes the answer is not right now. You need to stick with your, original schedule, but we need discernment for that.
Yes. And I love that you're bringing up the routines, because we've talked in the past about scaffolding our days with a morning and evening routine. But for time management, you also want to have your days planned out so that if something comes along and they say, hey, can you do this Wednesday at 3:00? And you look at your schedule and you say, oh, Wednesday at 3:00, that's when I do XYZ, then you know that you can weigh it. Is this more important than that? Instead of blindly saying yes all the time. And I think that's what we all got used to in the past, just kind of blindly saying yes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's self-preservation, and it reminds me, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, our deep dive for our membership this month is caring for the caregiver. This is one way you can care for yourself so that you can actually be a better caregiver to others that God has put in your life.
Yes. Yeah. That was something that I also discovered this year, was that taking the time for these routines really did actually make me better able to serve my family and to serve my neighbors. That, it seems like, you're taking this time up that could be better used, for something others focused, without realizing that this is what's fueling you to do that.
Exactly. And there's still time in your schedule that you set aside to be others focused. It's not like we're saying it's always all about you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah. So the main thing just being, just think about it, right? I mean, pause and prayerfully consider your yeses instead of just impulsively allowing new things back into your life and into your schedule.
Exactly. And meeting other people's expectations, because that can be a black hole.
Right. Yeah.
So that's wrapping up our show for today. But there are several ways that you can keep in touch with us before our next show. And we do hope that you'll join us in one of our several offerings. We're going to talk about them a little bit right now. First of all, of course, is the 6 Weeks to Sanity course. If you haven't joined the course, it's open right now. We would love to have you. We have several people in it right now who are gaining a lot, and we're about to meet them. Hopefully they'll be able to join us in our membership meeting, which is a perk if you join the course. And then, of course, there's the membership with the deep dive
Right.
that we talked about.
Yes. And the membership, again, is just going a little bit deeper than we did with the 6 Weeks to Sanity course. It's kind of touching on these same modules, but really allowing ourselves the time to flesh them out and to come together as a community and inspire one another in this pursuit, again, of simplicity, wellness, calm, and being a stabilizing presence for others. We bring in guests that experts that are helping us learn all kinds of things. It's been an amazing opportunity.
This month, for example, Dr. Iwano Popa is with us. She's a psychiatrist. She and her husband have started a program called Team for the Soul, where they work with people who are caregivers and teach them how to keep themselves whole. And that's what we're bringing to our membership and teaching them this month. And she's going to be on as a guest, and it's going to be so exciting. And don't worry, even though the membership meeting is in another week or so, you can just visit, pop in. We're not going to call on you. You didn't have to do the homework. It's all good. So no pressure, no stress.
Right.
And then last but not least, of course, is our book club. And this month we are reading Kitchen Counter Cooking School, which Molly and I actually read, oh my gosh.
Maybe 10 years ago now. Is it possible?
Maybe more than 10 years ago. We had a book club, and we're blessed to be able to live near each other, obviously. And it was such a good one, and I think our our book club is loving reading it.
Yeah, it'll be a fun discussion.
Yeah. And that is going to be Thursday, June 22nd at 6 p.m. Central Time. So join us. Just for any of these, just go to filledwithless.com and you can join us for any of our offerings. You can also take advantage of all of our free resources, and someday we hope to meet you. So this has been a fast hour, and hope you gained a lot of information and that you've been inspired and that it's given you hope. And Molly and I can't wait to see you again next month.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.